We welcome everyone to meeting 4 of Tourism and Outdoor Recreation. We appreciate everyone being here today. Just a few reminders as we get started. Please silence your cell phones. If you're interested in testifying, please sign up on the sheet by the door, and we will make sure that that gets pulled into the agenda. If any members are attending remotely, you will need to be either in the room, well, if you're attending remotely in your office, to be eligible to vote. If you're off campus, you'll be able to attend and ask and participate in the discussion, but you won't be eligible to vote. And we do have one special introduction, but we'll do that right after the roll. If Representative Branscombe we're going to introduce your guest in just a moment. Sasha, please call the roll.
Representative Baker.
Present.
Representative Branscombe.
Present in the room.
Representative Donahue.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Pfister.
Present in the room.
Representative Frazier Gordon. Representative Freeland.
Here in the room.
Representative Hale.
Here in the room.
Representative Huff.
Here in the room.
Representative Kirk McCormick.
Present in the room.
Representative Lawrence. Representative Palumbo.
Here in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Pollock.
Here in the room.
Representative Reed.
Here in the room.
Representative Roberts.
Here in the room.
Representative Stevenson. Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Timoney.
Here.
Representative Truitt.
Here in the room.
Representative Wesley.
In the room.
Representative Fugit.
Here.
Chairwoman King.
Present in the room, and we had one more member. Excellent, very good. Do we have any special guests to introduce today? Representative Branscombe, who have you got with you this morning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have my little boy Knox. He is with me today. He came up last night to stay with me and want to get some committee meetings in this morning. My little girl's on her way up. She's going to be paging on the House floor today, so glad to have them both up today.
Absolutely. We are as well. Welcome, and thank you for attending our committee today. We sure appreciate you and your sister's service throughout the day. Do you want to wave to the camera or anything? There we go. Excellent. We do have only one bill on the agenda today. It is Senate Bill 217. If our presenters would please come to the table. Neither legislator is a stranger to this committee, but if you would both introduce yourself for the record.
Senator Robin Webb, former member of this your chamber.
Ed Massey, Boone County District 66, and glad to be present here. Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
We do have a committee sub. Is it okay to adopt that? So we'll have everything in particular order so we can proceed.
Sounds good.
As such, do we have a motion on the committee sub? And a second? We will pass that by voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed to the committee sub? We also have a committee amendment that we need to adopt. That should be in your folder. Do we have a motion?
Second.
On the committee amendment and a second? All those in favor say aye.
Yeah, we'll get through it.
Any opposed? Okay, Senate Bill 217, as amended by committee sub, and the committee amendment is now eligible to be presented. Please proceed.
And I appreciate all the above in making this work in progress, continuing to be better, and I appreciate the chairwoman working with me on this, along with everybody else that's here. I do have a representative from the auditor's office, if Sarah Beth Gregory, who once again is no stranger to either of our chambers, but if Sarah Beth would come up and join me, and then Commissioner Storm is also here.
Would you like the commissioner to come? Okay.
He's welcome to come too.
Just pull up another chair. We'll always make room. It is the committee's protocol to ask any non-legislators to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
I do.
Thank you both. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the fish and wildlife issue is very important to me. I've worked on them the majority of my time here, both here and elsewhere. I grew up, my father was a 9-governor service in Fish and Wildlife in Northeast Kentucky region, worked closely with Representative Hale's father and others. And I grew up with these issues. I grew up going to commission meetings. I grew up hunting and fishing, and I still do. I also serve as the past president and co-founder of the National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucuses. We work closely with the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus and Foundation. I served 2 terms as the president and I am still on the executive council. So they're familiar with this legislation, and many of you came to our Sportsmen's Caucus meeting, and I appreciate that. And I know sportsmen and women are not only important to the state bottom line, it's important to our cultural heritage. It's important, Representative Pfister knows, the North American wildlife model is of the utmost importance through the nation and globally, and it sometimes can be under attack. So the purpose, this legislation was in response to my good friend Ed Massey's legislation, and we had a little different view on how things should go, and since that time we've had very productive meetings together and with stakeholders and with the auditor's office, Fish and Wildlife Department, as well as the executive branch, and sportsmen and women groups. So we have tried to come up with a product that will pass and protect Fish and Wildlife's autonomy from other agencies, outside influences, and all of those things. And that's what I liked about Representative Massey's bill. So we retained some of those provisions to do that. We also, so it's administratively attached to tourism with more autonomy to operate within that. They're funded by sportsmen and women dollars, not general fund dollars. The funding comes from the federal government from taxation of sportsmen and women pursuits and outdoor activity. So this is a little different animal to me. It's always been important to maintain the autonomy due to the funding mechanism and due to the mission. So that's the purpose of the legislation. And this allows the department to have flexibility in procurement, subject to the terms of 45A and the Government Contract Review Committee within our purview, and certainly allows them more flexibility along those lines. And I'll defer to the language in there on the audit. Section 7 is at the request of the auditor's office.
Yes, thank you, Senator Webb. That's one small change that was made in the committee substitute. That was language changed and modified at the request of the auditor's office. Will give us authority to look at the expenditures, procurements, and procurement policies without mandating looking at every single expenditure, but that's just part of how the audit process works. So we appreciate the Senator and Commissioner and everyone for working together on this and incorporating the change we requested.
Motion on the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. Do we have questions? I saw Representative Roberts' hand first.
Thank you. Thank you to the sponsors of this bill. I have a question on how many of us on this committee serve in the Sportsmen's Caucus, and I've heard some concerns from people in the sportsmen's field and industry and community, and I'm wondering if you can speak to any support you've heard from those groups.
Well, like I said, we have a product that protects, allows, the most important thing to me is the sportsmen and women have a voice in the selection of who's representing them on the commission. That's the number one. We retain that allowance and we have, our model is an envy in the nation. The way we do this, the sportsmen and women, the true stakeholders that elect their commissioners, and then for executive gubernatorial appointment, other states, a lot of states are envious of that model. And this retains the allowance of the regional district meetings for the sportsmen and women to elect 5 names to submit to the governor. It retains the sportsman's voice. It retains the executive authority of appointment. And, of course, we have Senate confirmation. So those are the levels of vetting, if you will. And there's also term limits when it comes to the commissioners. That is retained in the bill. And that's something we've dealt with for the past few years. So there's been a lot of some misinformation, and there's some comparison of the original bill that was somewhat troubling about other agencies and entities and constitutional officers intervention. That was a concern of everyone. I've met with stakeholders. There are, just like I practice law, and sometimes in a good case, everybody walks away a little that they didn't get everything they want. And that's kind of the way law is made. But I think the model is protected. I think there's fairness. I think there's one provision regarding terms, and it does make an anomaly with the commission as to whether or not that commissioner once appointed by the governor, but yet to be confirmed by the Senate, should serve. And it would make that, in the grand scheme of the state government, make it somewhat of an anomaly. But there is a limit on how long that could go on. And we came up with not a magic number. It was sort of a compromise number of a year. Felt like that was fair to allow the process to work, to maybe have a denial and another confirmation. And that sitting commissioner, prior to confirmation, could serve until his successor was appointed, up to a year. Again, that was just kind of no magic to that number. It was just sort of a compromise number, and we felt it was reasonable, and it would be deemed reasonable by a court of law.
If I could briefly respond as well, part of the controversy in this bill arose from my initial filing, which was House Bill 395, and that would have changed the way that the commissioners were selected entirely. And that also incorporated the Department of Agriculture, and that was what I think triggered the firestorm, because of the mix between agriculture and Fish and Wildlife has not always been on the best of terms. And it's not that they have different interests at hearts in many ways, and that was part of the issue that arose. What came out of that was that we maintained the structure of appointing commissioners. However, as indicated, the commissioners would be nominated by the sportsmen. They'd be selected by the governor, as has always been the case. The only difference is that the terms would end on the 31st of December each year, and then that they would have to be confirmed by the Senate before they actually sat for the position and make decisions regarding Fish and Wildlife. That's the only difference.
And we put in there January 20th for the governor to appoint, giving us, whether we're in short or long session, the time to either confirm or deny, and then time enough to go back to that list and let the governor make another appointment, to provide continuity for service. Nobody wants those seats to be vacant, but we tried to do the best we could in preserving the model, preserving the concerns we had, and the process now that we have Senate confirmation.
Yes, please follow up.
Just one more.
Sure.
In some of the things you said, another question arose to me, which is, I have some concern with that 1 year period, given the recent history and the tone and the tenor of the Senate not even taking up appointments that the governor has put forward. So do you share that concern that we could have someone go through the process, get appointed, the Senate wouldn't vote for them, would continue to not vote for them, and in just a year we might have a chance to actually get anyone there?
Well, they would still have a commissioner for a year, but after that it could be vacant. I think that puts enough pressure on on everybody involved in the process to do that, because the sportsmen and women are a viable constituency, and I know. And I think, if it were up to me, I'd like for the Senate to confirm within a time limit too. I don't think that bill would pass. But I think that's enough political pressure to ensure representation for the sportsmen and women and maintain the model.
Thank you. Representative Donahue, I saw your hand next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to everyone, and good morning to the panel. And Commissioner, always good to see you, my friend. My question is, in your sub you have here, I believe it's on page 6, 5 through 11 there. Could you explain that to me, please?
As to the autonomy?
Yeah, with the language here has changed, but solely, explain that language to me, please.
I can take a stab at that,
Sure.
Representative Donahue. Part of the reason that we did that is based on the State Fair Board decision that came out. An agency can be loosely attached to another group, and that's what occurred here. So they still need to be attached from a constitutional perspective to that agency. But this gives them the ability to act independently. So in the past, one of the things that was happening is that you could have a situation where the Department of Fish and Wildlife, in one case, they needed an attorney. And the attorney for the tourism department was conflicted out, even though that the Fish and Wildlife were paying for that attorney. So they had to go hire a separate attorney, and they had to seek authority and permission to do that. So this would allow them to still be under that agency, but act independently. It allows them to seek procurements independently. It allows them to take care of the day-to-day operations. Part of the reason that we had the audit piece in there is the concern that Senator Webb and I both had, is if you give them that independence, how will we be able to monitor the expenditures, the money that goes out and comes in without an adequate audit? So that's why that audit piece was also included in. That's why it's still attached under that agency, but it makes it loosely attached so they can operate independently.
I'll take it one step further. Used to, Fish and Wildlife had their own council. There's strict criteria on the federal government expenditures. If you don't spend them right, you can get in big trouble and have to pay them back. So that expertise can be lost when another agency hires your attorneys, or you want the ability to hire experts. Like I said, with the North American model, I want men and women who support hunting and fishing, trapping, and our cultural heritage. And I'll take it one step further. If you get a secretary, I'm not saying we've had it, I'm not saying we've got it, but you get a secretary that with the intent or agenda to undermine the mission of the Fish and Wildlife Department or the North American Wildlife Model, which includes hunting and in management, they can deter that mission by putting funds elsewhere or doing mandates in other ways that would undermine the funding or the mission or the management of properties owned or species. So I'd take it one step further and look at a potential that could happen that we're trying to protect from. And that's why it's important. And then, this committee retains jurisdiction as well.
May I have a follow-up, please?
Sure, please.
Well, we disagree, okay, because you talk about properties. I have issues all the time, say, for example, in Louisville with the Parks Department, because their vision is not my vision. And so in these jobs, we have sometimes make our vision, their vision. But it borders on the line, I think, of questioning the integrity of the system prior to what we have right now. And I'm a big outdoor person, my whole life. I do it all. But based on what's here, I can't support this. But thank you for bringing it.
Representative Hale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Senator Webb, your passion for fish and wildlife. I don't know if this is a good or a bad statement, but I probably know more about this issue than maybe anybody in this room, having worked for this department for 30 years. I've been in on the commission. I've sat in commission meetings. I've been to the processes. I know how the process works when they elect the commission members. How that process has worked over the years has been good. I like that process. I think it's a good process. And Senator Webb's, she's absolutely correct. Her father, Dr. Robert Webb, was so instrumental in this department as a commission member for, she said 9 governors. I'm not sure how many years that was, Senator, but him and my father were very close as well. My father being also a employee of Fish and Wildlife. So it's in my blood. It's been in my family's blood all of my life. I really like the legislation that has been brought here. One of the I guess the question, or I don't know if it's a question or comment, but if I'll put it in the form of a question, if that's okay. If there is a vacancy on that commission, and then we are not able, maybe you answered this, but if for instance we're not able to fill that within a year, and I agree with you, I think there should be a timeline that should happen. But if that is not the case, maybe we've had elections in the district, maybe that the individual has not been appointed, or maybe that individual has not been confirmed, then how long do you think we should be willing to wait, or is there any kind of timeline before we move forward to try to rectify that problem?
Well, the sitting commissioner would sit for a year, and then that seat would be deemed vacant. And I really don't have the magic answer for that. I just know that we will be back in every January, and we can have the ability to perhaps address that by means of what we do here in the legislature or by the sportsmen themselves. And putting pressure on to do that. I would hate to think that would be a problem, and I don't really have the answer for that. But this is, as always, this is a work in progress. These little changes have been made to maintain what we've got, and certainly I would be amenable in the future if anybody's got thoughts on that. It's the 11th hour now. If we had a problem, we'll be back here in January to address that, and every January we could address that.
I will add to that we have committed, Senator Webb and I have committed to, even through the interim, working together to continue to monitor this, to continue to take ideas from the groups, from the different sportsmen's groups and people that are interested in this matter. And so, again, at the 11th hour, we're trying to do what we can to fix what we believe a situation that needs to be addressed. But we will continue to work, and I know that you'll be part of that, Representative Hale. And so we'll continue to work with the sportsmen that are part of this group, and as well as other sportsmen's groups, to make sure we shore this up as well as we can.
May I follow up?
Of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple more comments. I think one of the problems that we have developed over the course of the years in this process, and we've tried, I know that I've tried, and I know that commissioners prior to Commissioner Storm have tried to do this as well, is to basically keep the political process out of this, which, to be very frank, that sometimes is almost impossible to do. We all realize that, but that's almost impossible to do. And I think we get into situations where we get individuals that are chosen by their respective sportsmen's, those individuals within those districts around the state. And one of the things that I really feel that we do almost wrongly in this is we base sometimes whether we want to put that individual on the commission based on their political party affiliation. And I've talked to Commissioner Storm about this on several occasions, and he has assured me and told me time after time that he doesn't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or whatever party. He wants that best individual, whomever that is, to represent that area of the state. And I know there is language in this that says you're not supposed to have over a certain number of this party or that party. And I don't even have no clue what the makeup is of that today. I have no clue. Don't even really care about that. I just think we need to make sure that we get the correct person there, regardless of their party affiliation. And I think the administrations have looked at not just the one we have, or the one prior, the one prior, the one prior to that. But that's been a big problem in this commission over the course of the years. And Senator Webb, could you just comment on that a moment?
I'll comment. I'm proud to say my dad was a very active Republican who chartered most of the young Republican clubs at East Kentucky.
Yeah.
And he served mostly under Democratic governors.
Yes, he did.
And there is a reason why the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus and our National Assembly Sportsmen's Caucus is not just bipartisan, it's nonpartisan. When you go to a meeting or talk about an issue involving what we talk about, you check it at the door.
Yep.
And that's the way it's got to be. And that's the way I always say there's certain areas that politics don't belong in, and that's the court system, the schools, and fish and wildlife, because the issues, regardless, the issues are just what they are, and they affect all of us. And even the non-hunters and non-fisher people are impacted. If you enjoy habitat, walking, if you enjoy kayaking or bird watching, all of those things are paid for by sportsmen. So party, I agree with Representative Hale, and it is sometimes troubling because we need people in there who have the best interests of the agency and the mission at heart, regardless of party or where they come from.
Can I follow up just one more?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Senator Webb. I really am glad to hear you say that. And I go back to a specific situation in my area where one time a gentleman was nominated for that position. He was a very staunch Democrat. Because of that, he wasn't able to serve. And he was a perfect fit for that position. Perfect fit. And so we've allowed that to sneak into this, and we need, for somehow or another, get that out of the equation, because we miss some really good people that would sit on that commission. And I want to just say one other thing. Fish and Wildlife certainly is a great agency. I don't think most people understand how much this state brings in economically with the fishing and the hunting and the deer hunting and the elk hunting and all the other things that's involved. It's an incredible amount of revenue that comes into this state because of the great resource that we have here. One of the things that I have been a little disappointed in, and I'm not going to deny saying this today, I think our current administration has been very anti-Fish and Wildlife, and that disappoints me. I think our secretary has been very anti-Fish and Wildlife, and that disappoints me very much. And again, that may be bringing a political thing back into this, but it's not meant that way. Regardless of who's sitting in the governor's mansion, they need to let Fish and Wildlife operate separately, like they have for decades upon decades, and not get involved in the process of how that department is run, because when that happens, then we get right back into these situations that we're trying to take care of right here. So I would just admonish the administration and the Secretary of the Cabinet to leave Fish and Wildlife alone, because they know what they're doing. Thank you, Madam Chairman, for giving me that opportunity to say that. Thank you.
And the committee appreciates you sharing your expertise on this subject with us. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've talked about Fish and Wildlife in here a lot, and we were talking about it last session, and there was a lot of discussion, over the interim, and Rep. Hale even commented, I believe it was last session, about how a lot of the sportsmen and women, have lost a lot of faith in the department. And even though the language has now been put into this committee sub, and that's a once-a-year review, can you just speak a little bit to, I'm having a hard time with given complete hiring authority and procurement authority, how just a once-a-year oversight is going to hold the department more accountable.
The auditor's office has always been there, to provide accountability. And we've got 45A procurement, and we also have codified the fact that the commissioner, and all employees are going to be under the executive ethics. So we've codified that as well. They're still subject to the 45A procedures, and you have standing to challenge that if the case would be. And you also have to have the commission, they have their meetings and there's minutes and all of those things. And our committee system can monitor as much as they want to and call them in and ask and monitor. I think we need to have that relationship and that role more. We used to have it more, to be honest. And, so they're accountable not only to us, but to the ethics authority and the statutes and others. And like I said, and we've talked about, during the interim, if we are welcome to entertain a better way of doing things. And if there's a problem, like I said, we'll be back here in a few months. So I feel pretty comfortable. And as to hiring, I want men and women with my sportsman's dollars that have expertise and think like me. And hiring, it's important to allow Fish and Wildlife to hire their own biologist and not some PETA biologist or somebody with a mission to thwart hunting or the bear numbers or something like that. And they're out there. Yeah. And they've infiltrated on a national level somewhat, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and other states. Mm-hmm. So we've got to build a firewall around this agency to protect the mission. If we're going to maintain management of the species, participate in our sister states' programs like the elk program that is in this legislation, we may have the opportunity to purchase with the Nature Conservancy. That language is in here as well. Gives flexibility for state money, federal money on acquisition of a property that Tennessee's already joined and bought the bottom half of, and probably would buy the top if we don't. So we've got that common mission to share and on these programs. So I really don't have a problem giving them hiring authority. We monitor that. If they abuse it, we come back and we change it. But I want that agency to have the ability to hire people consistent with the mission. It's very important to me.
Could I add one thing? We don't talk about a lot here, but we have federal audits because we do receive federal dollars, and we have extensive audits through the feds in addition to the auditor's office. And so I want to talk about the byproduct today, to be sitting here with somebody from the Senate, somebody from the House, and there's always been rhetoric about Fish and Wildlife and audits. We have the auditor's office here working with us. So this is government at its best. Democrats, Republicans, bipartisan, sports people sitting here today working together. And so I just want to thank each and every person that's worked on this project, and just about all of you I'm looking at here today I've had conversations with, and thank you all for your time.
One follow-up.
Yes, please.
Thanks for that, and I'm glad to see that this portion about the auditor has been added in. So my question is, if the department is still tied to tourism and we're making decisions on it and voting on it in here, why did we leave that the written report will go to the Interim Joint Committee on Natural Resources instead of tourism?
Well, that's the Senate Committee of Jurisdiction, so there's no prohibition from the chairman getting that. I'm sure that Chairman Smith will work with her along those lines. We have different designations in the Senate for committees of jurisdiction, and I would say that was just a drafting thing or what we're familiar with, and I would apologize for that. But I want this committee to maintain jurisdiction.
And we have always established a report with the Natural Resources Committee.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Webb, I appreciate your passion for the outdoors, and I thank you for your work on this with Representative Massey. I have one question, kind of a concern on page 8, where it talks about commission members. And it says in there, have held hunting and fishing license in Kentucky or another state for at least the previous 5 consecutive years. My concern is that with having the "and" in there and having had to have both of those for the period of 5 years, if you might miss out on some really well qualified people who are avid outdoorsmen. You may have one person who's an avid hunter but doesn't fish that much, or an avid fisherman who doesn't hunt that much. Could you please speak to that and let me know, is that a valid concern?
Well, I don't think that would preclude if you just had one and not a sportsman's license or something like that. That wouldn't preclude service. And I will go on and add to your question a little bit and say, if you're exempted, you would qualify as well, because I didn't want to exclude an individual, let's say, who might be sick a year, who hunts on their own property and might not have bought a license a year. We have exemptions. So I didn't want to, that person might get a conservation management award and not have bought a hunting license. So you because they were excluded. So we did allow that accommodation, but I don't think just having one of those licenses would preclude anybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Palumbo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a statement for the record, please. The Senate has confirmed only one of this governor's appointees, and that was Josh Lillard. Rob Lear and Brian Mackey, both of whom have a lot of support from sportsmen and women, have not been confirmed. And this governor appointed the first ever sportsman's liaison to the governor to show his support for sportsmen and women. I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any other questions for this portion of the panel? And to our guest, I failed to have you introduce yourself and your position. We know you. We did the swearing in, but just for the record, Please introduce yourself and your position.
Sure. Sarah Beth Gregory, Chief of Staff for the Auditor of Public Accounts.
And Commissioner Rich Storm.
Representative Hale.
May I indulge you with just one more comment?
Yes, please.
And
please.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to take up time, but
no, we appreciate your expertise.
One of the things I think that everybody needs to make sure they understand is those commission. We use the word commissioner, and we use the word commission. Those 9 members are not commissioners; they are commission members that are appointed by the governor, and those people hire this gentleman right here, and their job is to hire the commissioner and replace the commissioner if they deem necessary. So it is a very, very important role that we need to make sure that people in our districts are involved in making that selection, and then those appointments going on to the governor, and the governor making that selection, and then to the Senate. So they have a very crucial role. They basically don't set Fish and Wildlife protocol. They have input into it, but their main focus is to hire whomever that commissioner is and to dismiss that person. So they have a great role. And to Representative Stevenson's remarks, Representative Stevenson, I did make those remarks. I think Fish and Wildlife has got some repairs still to make today. But I think that we're on the right track. I believe we're going down the right track, and I think, Senator Webb, this bill is not – do I like everything that is in this? No, I've never seen a bill I liked everything in. And I'm sure you haven't either. But it's a good bill, and it's moving us in that right direction, and I appreciate your passion for Fish and Wildlife. It's almost as much as mine, so – but I thank you for that.
Thank you. Chairman, may I follow up on that?
Please.
It's also a non-paying position. So you've got people who are very passionate about the Fish and Wildlife that come down here for meetings, and they're on 24/7. They take the calls about the orphan deer and the possums in the road and all that stuff. Believe me, my mom can tell you that if she were here. I can testify for her. It's a very, and they mediate things between species of fishermen and crossbow versus traditional archery. I mean, there's a lot of layers. These people are about like us. They're on 24/7 serving their community. And I've spoken to some of the commissioners. They need to get out and go back to the Fish and Game clubs, be communicative with their constituency because they have one, and if they want to run again, get reelected and get your votes and be accountable to your constituency just like we do. So and that's my kind of tirade for what commissioners should do.
We do have one more question or comment from Representative Pfister.
I want to thank you all for your work on this. I'm not going to sit here and go through my resume, but I got started with the sportsmen's clubs and stuff in 1982. I've heard a lot of things from a lot of different governors and a lot of different politicians, a lot from sportsmen over the years. This bill covers most of those issues that I've heard from the sportsmen. It's a very good piece of legislation, and I think we need to pass it. And I want to thank you all for your work on this.
Thank you, Representative Pfister. The way the chair will handle this, we have one person to speak in opposition. If this panel can stay close, you will have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns from the next presenter, and thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes,
I
please.
have to go over to Senate Judiciary as I have a number of bills to work on there. So if I may be excused, my colleagues certainly can handle the flow.
Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you being with us today.
Madam Chair, I need to follow Chairman Massey to Senate Judiciary, but John Great, the General Counsel from the Auditor's Office, is in the room if further comment from our office is needed.
Excellent. It's a very busy time, as I say, in the short rows of the session, so we've got a lot going on. We certainly appreciate your busy schedule. Mr. Larry Richards, if you will please come to the table and introduce yourself for the record and your affiliation, what you're representing or organization, and then we will administer the oath. You'll need to be a little closer to the mic. Make sure the green light is lit. Let's see, push that little button. There we go. We want to make sure we hear you.
My name is Larry Richards.
There we go.
I'm here to represent the Kentuckiana Chapter of Safari Club International, the Appalachian Outdoors Association, the League of Kentucky Sportsmen, and Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Very good. If you will raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Madam Chair and the committee, first I'd like to thank Senator Webb and Representative Massey. They sat down with us on the 4th of March, and we tried to work through some of the issues we had with this bill. And I think we got some improvements to it. Our membership and our organizations remain concerned about some of the language that's in the bill before you. And this is before I haven't had a chance to read your sub 1 this morning. This bill in its current form removes universal and accepted standards of government oversight, potentially violates the Kentucky Constitution, and interferes with the appointment terms, length, and service of commission members. This bill threatens Kentucky sportsmen and women's statutory right in the selection of their commission members, and thus our involvement to ensure proper management and oversight of the department. 90% of the department's budget comes from licenses sales by Kentucky sportsmen and women. And our system was created by them to ensure that both managerial and financial control of the state's wildlife resources remained out of political control. This bill's current form can be weaponized to distract the commissioners away from the science-based, evidence-proven best practices for protecting Kentucky's fish and wildlife and wild places. Kentucky sportsmen and women have sent thousands, if not tens of thousands, of emails and letters opposing this bill and its 3 predecessors. Our major concerns still exist in Senate Bill 217, and it too must be amended or defeated. What we're asking for today, and I hear a lot of it in this committee this morning, we want to pause this bill and sit down with all the stakeholders and craft a bill we can all be proud of and support without having to come back year after year after year and redo this. We understand that no bill is perfect and that concessions must be made on both sides. But this bill is very far from satisfactory. I'd like to thank you for your time. I have some specific issues, if you'd like to hear them, regarding the constitutionality of this bill.
Yes, please proceed.
Restructuring the commission's appointment process violates the Kentucky Constitution and denies Kentucky sportsmen and women representation on the commission. These bills would qualify an appointee to the commission who has held hunting and fishing license in any state for the previous years. This allows appointment of an individual who has not invested in the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, has not been a resident of Kentucky for a substantial period, and is not familiar with conservation and wildlife in Kentucky. Candidates who have not invested in the system and have no experience in Kentucky should not hold power within the commission. It qualifies an appointee to the commission who has hunted and fished in Kentucky but is otherwise license exempt. And again, if he hasn't put his money up, he shouldn't be there. It allows a commission member to serve 1 term after the end of their term. This provision alone violates Section 28, separation of powers, 76, the executive appointment power, and 93, inferior officers of the Commission of Kentucky Constitution. One branch of government cannot exercise the power of another. The executive branch holds the sole appointment authority of these commission members. Commission terms are limited to 4 years, ending when their successor has been appointed. Kentucky sportsmen and women's rights to have candidates chosen through a valid election should not be impeded. Requiring a commission seat to be vacated for 1 year after their end of their term, if a successor has not been confirmed, and remain vacant until confirmation of the next one, plainly violates 28, 76, and 93 of the state constitution. Kentucky sportsmen and women have a right to have candidates chosen through a valid election, and it should not be impeded. When we set out to violently change the way we've done things for a number of years, there needs to be a better reason than this. There isn't. my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Do we have any questions or comments from committee members, either in the room or online? Representative Hale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
You made a comment there, and I'm not sure if I exactly understand or where you're coming from on that comment. You made a comment that your members do not have a process in the choice of the commission members. How do you justify that any individual in this state that's holds a valid hunting and fishing license does not have a process in that choice?
I don't think that's what I said, sir.
Well, if I misunderstood, I apologize. But
yeah, what I'm saying is I don't think that anyone who has held a license in another state for 5 years qualifies him to be a commission member in Kentucky.
Well, may I?
Yes, please.
I'm not sure. I heard you make that statement, but I did believe that you also said that they were not involved in the process. So how is that? How's that possible? Anybody that has a license in this state can participate in that process.
Not in another state. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that no one who has holding a license in another state for 5 years does not qualify you to be part of the process in Kentucky automatically.
I apologize. I must have misunderstood your comments. I'm sorry if I took that the wrong way. Thank you.
Representative Pfister.
I actually heard it the same way. And I also take exception with the fact of people that are license exempt. You know, I've hunted and fished my entire life, and I've bought a license. But I now am a landowner, and I don't have the time to travel and do what I used to do, so I hunt at home. Doesn't mean that I haven't paid those dues, or I don't know anything about wildlife, or couldn't be a decent commission member if I was chosen to do that. I think that's very, very important to have that in this bill, because we don't want to exclude people that may be beneficial to our department.
And exclusion is not the intent, but as you said, you bought a license for a number of years. You had invested in the system. And again, this is one of those things I think we could all sit down at the table with and craft a much better language for a bill that includes those or gets to the bottom of it. And that's why I think this bill should be paused, sir. We've got a fair bill. We don't have a great bill. And just to pass it, that doesn't, I don't want to have to come back here in a year and redo the fine points of this. Let's get this right the first time.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Thank you.
Oh, we do have one more. Thank you, Representative Wesley.
I would just like to make a comment about the Senator Webb and Representative Massey for the work they've done on this bill. And I also want to give a shout out to our Commissioner, Rich Storm, not just being active in my district, but throughout the state. He's done a tremendous job, and I just want to thank him. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Madam Chair,
Senator, would you like to address any of the
you know
comments?
how we lawyers are, we rebut things. But anyway, I want to give the committee some assurance, and Chris is smiling. He's heard me rebut things before in our prior lives. Certainly, the provision that was specified as to individuals eligible to serve, there's vetting processes that we did not disturb, and that if an individual comes forth and expresses a desire to run for the commission, they have to go through the sportsman's election process. The sportsmen and women I trust to vet those individuals like they have for many years. Then, if they are successful, they go to the executive boards and commissions vetting process. So they're vetted there. Then thirdly, they come to the Senate for confirmation. So there's three alternatives for vetting of anyone that might have retired and come back to Kentucky or be license exempt or whatever that may not meet the ideal, in some people's minds criteria who should serve. But there's three vetting levels. So I wanted to tell the committee that I wasn't for term limits, but we've got them. I think I gave a floor speech against them because you lose a lot of institutional knowledge, and they're, you know, the commissioners were just like us. We have a term, and then it's up to us to get elected again. But I wasn't for that. But we've got them, so we're going to live with them. And no one's going to serve another term. The original bill language did not allow that. To the word partial was my original draft. But we scaled it back and put a time limit on it for a year. We thought that was a reasonable compromise after meeting with individuals and hearing those same concerns. It is not my goal. I've been here a long time, practicing law longer, to do anything unconstitutional. I'm jealously protective of my Constitution, both the United States and Kentucky. But, you know, there are disagreements on interpretation. I don't agree with that interpretation. I think we have term limits and confirmation, so the Senate we've already micromanaged. The legislature giveth and the legislature taketh away. So we have authority as long, you know, within certain bounds. I think this bill passes that muster, and I appreciate the committee's indulgence.
Any final questions or comments from members? As a reminder, we do have a motion and a second on the original bill as amended by the committee substitute, a committee amendment. Does everyone feel like they've had the opportunity to share their questions and concerns? If so, Sasha, please call the roll.
Representative Baker?
Yes.
Representative Branscombe?
Yes.
Representative Donahue?
May I explain my vote, please?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I just want to make it a matter of public record. I have privately, and I'll say it publicly, support Commissioner Storm. I think he's a good man. I think he does a great job. That's not the issue here today, okay? You know, there has to be a cohesiveness between departments, and when we become a separate entity, I have issues I said earlier about in Louisville when I deal with the Parks Department. Sometimes their ideas aren't our ideas. But the state of Kentucky, it's the state of Kentucky. We have to work collectively together. And on reference, you know, the statement was made earlier about political. You have to ask yourself, you know, that the Senate hasn't confirmed the vacancies they have on the commission, but we want to entrust them in the future to make a quick confirmation in the future. So I respect everyone in this room. We just disagree. So I vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Pfister?
Yes.
Representative Frazier Gordon? Representative Freeland?
Yes.
Representative Fugit?
Yes.
Representative Hale?
Very glad to vote yes, and certainly thank Senator Webb for a great job. Yes.
Representative Huff?
Yes.
Representative Kirk McCormick? Yes. Representative Lawrence? Representative Palumbo?
May I explain my vote, please?
Yes, ma'am.
In the auditor's recent audit, the report stated there needs to be a change of culture in fish and wildlife. I listened to their findings and vote no.
Thank you.
Representative Pollock?
Yes.
Representative Reed? Representative Roberts?
No.
Representative Stevenson?
May I explain my vote briefly?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, there was a lot of talk today about being accountable to our constituents, and too many of mine have said that they still have a lot of concerns with these bills, and so I feel like I would not be doing my job here unless I voted no today. I will reserve the right to vote otherwise on the floor if I hear from them and the changes that happen in the sub are amenable. But for today, my vote's a no.
Representative Tackett Lafferty?
Explain my vote, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I am a no vote along the lines of Representative Stevenson. This is a very difficult vote for me because I have tremendous respect for the representatives such as Mr. Massey and Hale and Senator Webb. I know you're very knowledgeable about this topic, but just as Representative Stevenson, you know, we talk about being accountable to our constituents, and this is it was said earlier, this is a very viable group of of a constituency, especially in my neck of the woods, especially as someone who has at one time had the biggest buck on the wall and whose brother's bird dog gets a stocking every Christmas and is considered a part of the family. But I have received concerns and emails still from my constituents. They were basically up in arms with the first bill that was filed, as you know, Senator. And so I would like to, reach back out to them. But for today, I'm definitely a no. Thank you.
Representative Timoney.
Briefly explain my vote.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I had some concerns about the fiscal transparency piece with the addition of the auditor's office that completely relieved that. This bill has gone through quite a process, and I believe that just by the nature of the department, that there are enough eyes watching that the transparency piece is, for me, is taken care of completely. Thank you for bringing this forward. I'm a yes.
Representative Truitt.
Yes.
Representative Wesley.
Yes.
Chairwoman King.
Yes, ma'am. Representative Frazier Gordon, would you like to log a vote on this bill?
Yes, ma'am. I vote aye.
The vote was 15-5, so we are passing to this point. We want to make sure we do our parliamentary procedure exactly right. I now need a motion to roll the committee amendment into the committee substitute. And a second, and we'll pass that portion with a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Now we do have a title amendment. We need a motion to adopt the committee title amendment. And a second, and we will take a voice vote on that as well. Any opposed? We appreciate your patience on that. Senator, Senate Bill 217, as amended in this committee, is now eligible to be considered on the House floor. We appreciate you being here with us this morning.
I appreciate that. Representative Massey will be carrying that. I just want to thank Larry and his groups. I know their heart's in the right place. SCI is one of our national sponsors. I work closely with SCI, former member of the Dallas SCI. So I just want to thank them for their input and urge continued communication, because that's always a good thing. But I thank you, Madam Chair, for your work and your time. I know it's valuable. All of you all, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Members, unless we have something unforeseen come before us, this will likely be our last meeting of the session. Would you please join me in thanking all of our committee staff and our policy analyst and communications director. Thank you. You are adjourned.